This is my ultralight. It's a QuicksilverMX. It used to be their base model. This one's quite a few years old. I've had it for about 3 years. It's very easy to fix. Now they're very particular. You just don't put an airplane together like you do a hot rod or something. Everything has to be just so. The slightest deviation from the plan that it's supposed to be, that you're supposed to be following, can cause the plane to fly wildly different than you're expecting. So you got to stay right with the book. And I'd advise anybody to buy, especially if they have a used plane, you should call the factory and get the book on your particular airplane, and they'll send it to you. And it gives you a lot of insight on what you should be doing, measurements and things that you can take to make sure that everything's in trim. Now, one good thing about the MX is that it has a real good short field takeoff and landing capability. Good climb rate. Doesn't have much of a high-end speed, but it's got good climb rate. If I have any kind of a headwind at all, I can be in the air sometimes in 50, 60 feet easy and land somewhere in that area too. On the downside, an MX doesn't have ailerons. This makes it a real fair weather machine. Without ailerons, you can't land and take off in a crosswind. You have to land and take off directly into the wind all the time. Quicksilver is a good plane for beginners. It's very docile. Its stalls are pretty slow, right around 15, 17 miles an hour. The farthest I've gone on cross country is generally about 60 miles out, 60 miles back. That makes for a nice day trip. You can get about 35, 40 miles an hour airspeed, equivalent ground speed depending on your winds. It's not a fast plane, but ultralighting's not for speed anyway. If I am with a group of other ultralights that have the double surface wings or have fairings or whatnot and larger engines, they can pretty much leave me behind. In fact, they can hardly stay back with me. I generally fly a lot slower than they do and get there later, but it's not a big problem. If you're in a big hurry, this isn't really your kind of sport anyway. You can find these Quicksilvers, these old MXs, all over the place. You can get them from anywhere between $2,000 to $4,000. They're generally all getting to be pretty old because this design hasn't been made by Quicksilver for some years. But they're still a good value, and if your engine's running good, they're a lot of fun to fly. The MX is a pretty good plane for beginners and experienced pilots alike. Most experienced pilots are going to want a little bit more performance. Like I said, you're only going most of the time about 35 miles an hour in an MX, and in ultralights you're allowed to go a good 55 anyway. So this is a slower plane, but it climbs really good, and it's docile. It stalls at about 15 miles an hour airspeed. So you're not having to come in as hot as you do on some of the other double covered wing ultralights and that sort of thing. So especially if you're a beginner, I would highly recommend the MX.